The year is 1951, and the neon lights of Chicago's North Side cast long shadows across rain-slicked streets where power is measured in bullets and respect is earned through blood. In the smoky backrooms of speakeasies that never truly closed after Prohibition, men in expensive suits and fedoras conduct business that the newspapers dare not print. Mickey Mac Benedetto adjusts his black wool overcoat as he steps from a gleaming Cadillac Coupe de Ville onto the wet pavement outside Torino's restaurant. The chrome bumper reflects the red glow of the establishment's neon sign, casting an ominous light across his sharp Italian features. At 35, Mac carries himself with the quiet confidence of a man who has survived the brutal streets and earned his place in the Torino crime family through cunning and ruthless efficiency. The restaurant's mahogany-paneled interior buzzes with the controlled energy of celebration. Crystal chandeliers illuminate tables filled with men in tailored suits, their diamond cufflinks catching the light as they raise glasses of aged whiskey. The air is thick with expensive cigar smoke and the sound of Frank Sinatra crooning from the jukebox. Tonight, the family celebrates another successful operation, the elimination of rival boss Salvatore Codor and his entire crew in a warehouse ambush that will be front-page news tomorrow. Don Francesco Torino, a silver-haired man of 60 with kind eyes that belie his iron reputation, stands at the head of the main table. His navy pinstripe suit is impeccably tailored, and a gold pocket watch chain glints across his vest. The Don's weathered hands gesture gracefully as he speaks, commanding absolute attention from every man in the room. Tonight, we honor two soldiers who brought honor to our family, Don Torino announces, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades ruling Chicago's underworld. Mickey Benedetto and Bobby Banquo step forward. Mac exchanges a glance with his closest friend and partner, Bobby Banquo. Bobby, a stocky man with laughing eyes and prematurely gray temples, straightens his burgundy tie and grins. They've worked together for 8 years, since returning from the war in Europe, where they learned that violence, properly applied, could solve any problem. The crowd parts as the two men approach the Don. Camera bulbs would flash if any photographer dared enter this sacred space. Instead, the only light comes from the warm glow of table lamps with fringed shades, casting dramatic shadows across the assembled faces. Faces that have seen fortunes made and lives taken with equal measure. Don Torino places a paternal hand on Mac's shoulder. Mickey, your planning of the Codor operation was masterful. The police found nothing, and our rivals now understand the price of disrespect. He turns to Bobby. And Bobby, your execution was flawless, clean, efficient, professional. The Don reaches into his jacket and produces 2 envelopes thick with cash. Mickey, you're now my lieutenant for all North Side operations. Bobby, you'll oversee the docks. The assembled men erupt in applause, their voices echoing off the restaurant's tin ceiling. As the celebration continues around them, Mac and Bobby step onto the restaurant's side terrace. The Chicago wind whips between the buildings, carrying the scent of the nearby lake and the distant sound of elevated trains. Street lamps create pools of yellow light on the empty street below, while neon signs from nearby establishments paint the brick walls in blues and reds. Lieutenant, Bobby says, lighting a Lucky Strike cigarette. The flame from his silver Zippo briefly illuminates his face. Not bad for a couple of guys from the old neighborhood. Mac leans against the wrought iron railing, his breath visible in the cold air. It's a start, Bobby. But look around. We're still taking orders. Still waiting for scraps from the Don's table. He gestures toward the restaurant's glowing windows, where silhouettes of more senior family members continue their celebration. The conversation is interrupted by the approach of 3 figures emerging from the alley's shadows. They move with an otherworldly grace that seems out of place in this world of hard men and harder choices. The first is an elderly woman in a black shawl, her silver hair gleaming under the streetlight. The second, a middle-aged woman with penetrating dark eyes, wears a deep purple coat that seems to absorb the surrounding light. The third, younger but with an ancient quality to her movements, is draped in emerald green silk that rustles like autumn leaves. Mickey Benedetto, the eldest, speaks, her voice carrying an accent that suggests old country origins but somehow deeper, more timeless. We bring word from the other side of tomorrow. Bobby's hand instinctively moves toward the .38 revolver beneath his jacket, but something about these women freezes him in place. The younger woman smiles, revealing perfect white teeth that gleam like pearls in the lamplight. "Hail to you, Mickey," she intones, "Lieutenant of the North Side." The middle woman continues the strange greeting. "Hail to you, Mickey, who shall command the docks and harbors." The eldest completes their bizarre prophecy. "Hail to you, Mickey, who shall be dawn of all Chicago." The three women stand motionless in the swirling Chicago wind, their clothing untouched by the gusts that whip newspaper scraps and cigarette butts around their feet. Mac feels a chill that has nothing to do with the October night, while Bobby's cigarette trembles slightly between his fingers. "Who are you ladies?" Mac asks, his voice steady despite the unease crawling up his spine. "And what kind of game are you playing?" The woman in purple steps closer, her dark eyes reflecting the neon light from a nearby bar sign. "We are the sisters who read the threads of fate in tea leaves and blood," she whispers. "We see what was, what is, and what must come to pass." The eldest woman's weathered hands emerge from her black shawl, revealing palms crossed with deep lines like a roadmap of the city's dark secrets. The dawn grows old, Mickey Benedetto. His heart weakens with each passing season, though he hides it well behind his strength. Bobby flicks his cigarette into the alley, its ember glowing briefly before dying in a puddle. "Come on, Mac, this is crazy talk, let's get back inside where it's warm." But Mac remains transfixed, studying these mysterious figures who seem to materialize from the very shadows of the underworld itself. The youngest woman in green silk glides forward, her movement like smoke given form. "Your friend Bobby speaks wisely," she says, her voice like honey over broken glass. "But wisdom and destiny rarely walk the same path. Tell us, Mickey, what burns brightest in your heart? What dream haunts your sleep?" Images flash through Mac's mind. Sitting behind the Don's massive oak desk in the private office above Torino's restaurant, commanding respect from every family in the city, wearing the heavy gold signet ring that marks the true ruler of Chicago's underworld. He sees himself in perfectly tailored suits that cost more than most men earn in a year, sees powerful politicians and corrupt judges seeking his favor. "I dream of respect," Mac admits, his voice barely audible over the distant rumble of the L train. "Real respect. Not just from soldiers and lieutenants, but from everyone who matters in this city." The three women exchange glances that seem to communicate volumes. The middle woman nods slowly, as if confirming something they already knew. Before the Christmas snow melts from Michigan Avenue, the eldest prophesies, "You will command more than the North Side." Before the spring flowers bloom in Lincoln Park, "You will control the waterfront." And before another winter comes to this city. She pauses, letting the weight of anticipation build. "You will sit where Don Torino sits now." The youngest woman reaches into her emerald coat and produces a small object. A silver coin that seems to glow with its own internal light. She presses it into Mac's palm, and he feels an electric shock travel up his arm. "Keep this close, Mickey Benedetto," she instructs. "When the moment of choice arrives, you will know what must be done." Without another word, the three figures turn and disappear back into the alley's depths, their footsteps making no sound on the wet pavement. Within seconds, it's as if they were never there at all. Only the silver coin in Mac's hand and the lingering scent of exotic perfume prove the encounter wasn't a hallucination. Bobby stares into the empty alley, then at his friend. "Mac, what the hell was that about? Those dames were giving me the creeps, something fierce." Mac examines the coin in his palm. In the streetlight, he can make out strange symbols etched around its edge, symbols that seem to shift and change when he's not looking directly at them. The metal feels warm against his skin, almost alive. "Just some fortune tellers, Bobby," Mac says, slipping the coin into his vest pocket. "You know how these old Italian neighborhoods are, full of superstitions and mystics." But even as he dismisses the encounter aloud, Mac's mind races. The women knew things. About the Don's hidden health problems. About the power structure of the family. About Mac's deepest ambitions. How could three strangers possess such intimate knowledge? The sound of laughter drifts from the restaurant as the celebration continues. Through the windows, Mac can see Don Torino holding court, his animated gestures captivating his audience of hardened criminals who hang on his every word like schoolchildren listening to a beloved teacher. "The Don does look tired tonight," Mac observes, studying the older man's profile through the glass. "More tired than usual." Bobby follows his gaze. "He's been carrying this family for 30 years, Mac. That kind of weight ages a man fast." He lights another cigarette, the flame illuminating the concern etched across his features. But he's still sharp as a razor. Don't let anyone tell you different. Mac nods, but his hand unconsciously moves to his vest pocket, feeling the warmth of the mysterious coin. The women's words echo in his mind. Before another winter comes to this city, you will sit where Don Torino sits now. The October wind picks up again, rattling the restaurant's windows and sending a black cat scurrying across the street below. In the distance, a police siren wails, probably racing toward the warehouse where Cawdor's body lies growing cold. By morning, the newspapers will paint another picture of Chicago's endless cycle of violence, never suspecting the carefully orchestrated nature of tonight's bloodshed. Inside Torino's restaurant, the celebration reaches its peak as Don Francesco raises his glass of aged bourbon for a final toast. The amber liquid catches the chandelier light like liquid gold, and the assembled men fall silent with the reverence reserved for sacred moments. To our family, the Don declares, his voice carrying 3 decades of absolute authority. May our bonds remain stronger than blood, and our enemies learn the price of crossing the Torino name. Salute. The room erupts in unison, glasses clinking like wind chimes in the smoky air. Mac and Bobby rejoin the celebration, but Mac's mind remains clouded with visions of prophecy and silver coins that burn warm against his chest. As the evening winds down, expensive cars, Cadillacs, Lincolns, and Packards begin pulling up to the restaurant's valet stand. Men in cashmere overcoats and diamond-pin ties bid their farewells, disappearing into the night with their bodyguards flanking them like shadows. The family's business never sleeps, but even soldiers need rest before tomorrow's operations. Mac slides behind the wheel of his midnight blue Buick Roadmaster, its chrome gleaming under the restaurant's neon sign. Bobby climbs into the passenger seat, loosening his tie as the powerful V8 engine purrs to life. "Drop me at the Blue Moon," Bobby requests, referring to the nightclub where he conducts much of his evening business. "Stella's waiting for me, and you know how she gets when I'm late." Mac navigates the nearly empty streets, passing late-night diners with their windows glowing yellow against the darkness, newsstands where tomorrow's headlines are already being stacked, and the occasional patrol car whose occupants offer respectful nods to men they know better than to question. "Bobby," Mac says as they stop at a red light beneath the towering marquee of the Chicago Theater, "what do you think about the Don's health?" Bobby shifts in the leather seat, studying his friend's profile in the traffic light's glow. "I think Francesco Torino is the toughest son of a bitch this city's ever seen." "Why?" "Just wondering," he seemed. "I don't know, different tonight. Tired maybe." The light changes to green, and Mac guides the Buick through the intersection. Bobby's reflection in the passenger window appears thoughtful, concerned. "Mac, we've got good positions now, Lieutenant of the North Side. That's serious respect. Don't start thinking thoughts that could get us both fitted for cement shoes." But Mac's hand moves unconsciously to his vest pocket, where the silver coin seems to pulse with its own heartbeat. The mysterious women's voices echo in his memory. "Before another winter comes to this city, you will sit where Don Torino sits now." After dropping Bobby at the Blue Moon, a neon-lit establishment where jazz music spills onto the sidewalk and well-dressed couples disappear through red velvet curtains, Mac drives toward his own home in a respectable Refix, North Shore neighborhood. Here, successful businessmen live alongside family members who've learned to blend into legitimate society. His house is a 2-story colonial with white shutters and a perfectly manicured lawn that his wife Maria tends with obsessive care. Warm light glows from the living room windows, and Mac can see Maria's silhouette moving behind the sheer curtains. Even at this late hour, she waits for him, as she has every night for the 7 years of their marriage. Maria Benedetto is a woman of extraordinary beauty and even more extraordinary ambition. At 28, she possesses the kind of elegance that graces magazine covers, but her dark eyes hold depths that most society photographers fail to capture. She understands the family business better than many of the men involved, and she's never been content to simply play the role of a submissive mob wife. Mac finds her in the living room, wearing a silk nightgown the color of fresh blood, her raven black hair falling in perfect waves across her shoulders. She's reading the evening edition of the Tribune, but her attention immediately shifts to her husband as he enters. "There you are, darling," she purrs, setting aside the newspaper, and rising from the cream-colored sofa. "I've been reading about your victory. The warehouse business made the late edition." Mac loosens his tie, feeling the weight of the evening's events settling over him like a heavy blanket. "The papers don't know the half of it, Maria. They never do." She moves to him with the fluid grace of a predator, her hands working the knots from his shoulders with expert precision. "Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single detail." As Mac recounts the evening, the celebration, the promotions, the praise from Don Torino, Maria's eyes grow brighter, more intense. When he reaches the part about the three mysterious women, she stops massaging his shoulders and moves to face him directly. "Prophecies?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "What exactly did they tell you?" Mac hesitates, then reaches into his vest pocket and produces the silver coin. It seems to glow even brighter in the lamplight, its strange symbols writhing like living things across its surface. Maria takes the coin in her perfectly manicured fingers, turning it slowly as she studies its mysterious markings. A smile spreads across her lips, not the gentle smile she wears for neighbors and church functions, but something far more dangerous. "Lieutenant of the North Side," she muses, "commander of the docks." And then, she looks up at her husband, her dark eyes blazing with an inner fire. "Don of all Chicago." 3 weeks after the Cawdor operation, November's chill settles over Chicago like a gray wool blanket. The city's skyline disappears behind veils of lake-effect snow, and the neon signs of Rush Street reflect off wet pavement in brilliant streaks of color. In the private dining room of Torino's restaurant, Don Francesco sits across from Mac at a mahogany table set with bone china and crystal stemware that belonged to his grandmother in Sicily. The Don's hands shake almost imperceptibly as he cuts his veal marsala, a tremor he tries to hide by keeping his movements deliberate and controlled. His usually immaculate appearance shows subtle signs of decline. His silver hair lacks its normal luster, and the expensive fabric of his navy suit hangs slightly loose on his diminishing frame. "Mickey," the Don says, dabbing his lips with a linen napkin, "I have a proposition that requires absolute discretion." Mac sets down his fork, studying the older man's face in the candlelight. "Of course, Don Francesco. You have my complete attention." The Don reaches into his jacket and produces a sealed envelope, its cream-colored paper bearing the embossed seal of the Torino family. "Tomorrow night, I'm hosting a private gathering at my home in Lake Forest. Just family. My closest advisors and their wives. I want you and Maria to attend." The invitation feels heavier than paper should, weighted with implications Mac doesn't yet understand. Lake Forest represents the Don's most private sanctuary, a sprawling estate hidden behind tall hedges and wrought iron gates where only the most trusted family members are ever welcomed. "It would be our honor," Mac replies, though something in the Don's manner suggests this is more than a social courtesy. Don Torino leans forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Mickey, I've been thinking about succession. About the future of this family when I'm no longer able to carry its burdens." His pale blue eyes, still sharp despite his physical decline, search Mac's face. "You've proven yourself capable, loyal, and most importantly, you understand that respect is earned through strength, not inherited through blood." Mac's heart pounds against his ribs like a caged bird, but he keeps his expression neutral. "Don Francesco, you're talking like you're going somewhere. The family needs your leadership." The older man smiles sadly, touching his chest in a gesture so subtle it might have been unconscious. "We all have our time, Mickey." The wise man prepares for winter before the first snow falls. After dinner, Mac drives through the increasingly deserted streets toward home, his mind racing with the implications of the Don's words. The Buick's heater struggles against the November cold, and frost begins forming on the edges of the windshield despite the defroster's efforts. He finds Maria in their bedroom, seated at her vanity table applying cold cream to her face with methodical precision. The room reflects her expensive tastes: silk wallpaper in deep burgundy, a 4-poster bed with Egyptian cotton linens, and original oil paintings that cost more than most men earn in a year. "How was dinner with the Don?" she asks, meeting his eyes in the mirror's reflection. Mac loosens his tie, watching his wife's nightly ritual. "He invited us to his home tomorrow night. Private gathering. Just the inner circle." Maria's hands pause in their work, and Mac sees her pupils dilate slightly in the mirror. "His home? Francesco never entertains there unless. She turns to face him directly. What else did he say? Mac relates the conversation, watching Maria's expression grow more intense with each detail. When he mentions the Don's comments about succession, she rises from her chair with predatory grace. This is it, Mickey, she breathes, moving to him with urgent steps. This is what those women predicted. The opportunity is presenting itself. Mac shakes his head, backing away from her approaching figure. Maria, you're talking crazy. Don Francesco has been like a father to me. He's given me everything I have. Everything? Her laugh is sharp as broken glass. You're still taking orders, still waiting for permission to make real moves. Those women said you would be Don before winter ends. This winter, Mickey. Not someday, not eventually. Now. She moves to their bedroom safe, hidden behind a false panel in the walk-in closet. Inside, wrapped in black velvet, lies a .22 caliber pistol. Small, quiet, and virtually untraceable. The weapon gleams dully in the bedroom's lamplight, its compact frame designed for close work. The Don's health is failing, Maria continues, her voice taking on a hypnotic quality. Everyone can see it, even if they won't admit it. He's looking for a successor because he knows his time is coming. But what if that time came a little sooner than expected? Max stares at the gun in his wife's hands, feeling the silver coin in his pocket growing warm against his chest. You're suggesting murder. Not a hit on some rival family, not business. You're talking about killing the man who made me. Maria's dark eyes blaze with an inner fire that makes her beautiful face appear almost demonic in the bedroom shadows. I'm talking about taking what's rightfully yours. About seizing destiny instead of waiting for it to find you. Outside their window, snow begins to fall in earnest, coating the suburban street in pristine white that will soon be stained gray by city soot. In the distance, a church bell chimes midnight, its bronze voice carrying across the sleeping neighborhoods where honest citizens dream honest dreams. Think about it, Mickey, Maria whispers, her fingers tracing the gun's cold metal surface. Tomorrow night, in his own home, surrounded by those closest to him. No one would ever suspect. A heart attack, perhaps. His health has been poor lately. Or maybe a tragic accident. These old houses, their wiring can be so unreliable. Mac feels as though he's standing at the edge of a cliff, with Maria's voice calling him to jump while his conscience screams warnings about the rocks below. The silver coin pulses against his chest like a second heartbeat, and he can almost hear the three mysterious women whispering in the November wind that rattles their bedroom windows. The next evening, Mac stands before his bedroom mirror, adjusting his black bow tie, preparing for what may be the most important night of his life. His reflection stares back with hollow eyes, the face of a man wrestling with demons that whisper seductive promises of power and glory. The tailored tuxedo fits him perfectly, midnight black wool with satin lapels, the uniform of Chicago's elite social circles. Maria emerges from her dressing room, wearing a stunning emerald evening gown that hugs her curves like liquid silk. Diamond earrings catch the light as she moves, and her dark hair is swept into an elegant chignon that exposes the graceful line of her neck. She looks every inch the sophisticated mob wife, beautiful enough to grace magazine covers, yet dangerous enough to orchestrate murder. You look perfect, darling, she purrs, straightening his white pocket square. Tonight, everything changes. The drive to Lake Forest takes them through Chicago's most exclusive neighborhoods, past mansions hidden behind tall hedges and wrought iron gates that speak of old money and older secrets. Mac's Buick Roadmaster glides over perfectly maintained roads, while snow continues to fall, creating a winter wonderland that masks the darkness of their intentions. Don Torino's estate sits on 10 acres of pristine lakefront property, its Tudor Revival architecture suggesting European nobility transplanted to the American Midwest. Warm light glows from dozens of windows, and valets in white gloves direct arriving vehicles along the circular driveway. Other family members emerge from their luxury automobiles, Cadillacs, Packards, and Lincoln Continentals, their wives draped in mink stoles and diamond jewelry that represents fortunes built on blood and fear. Inside, the mansion radiates old-world elegance mixed with American prosperity. Persian rugs cover polished hardwood floors, oil paintings in gilded frames line the walls, and crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across surfaces polished to mirror brightness. A string quartet plays softly in the corner, while white-gloved waiters serve champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver platters. Mac recognizes the assembled guests, the inner circle of the Torino family and their wives. There's Carmine Rossetti, the Don's oldest advisor, with his wife Isabella. Vincent Vinny Romano, who controls the Southside operations, stands beside his young bride Catherine. Bobby Banquo mingles near the fireplace with Stella, her blonde hair gleaming like spun gold in the firelight. Don Francesco moves among his guests with practiced grace, but Mac notices the subtle signs of his declining health. The way he grips chair backs for support, the slight breathlessness after climbing the main staircase, the tremor in his hands when he thinks no one is watching. The silver coin in Mac's pocket seems to burn hotter with each observation. Magnificent home, Maria whispers to Mac as they accept champagne from a passing waiter. It could be hours before Christmas morning. The evening progresses with civilized conversation about legitimate business ventures that serve as fronts for the family's illegal operations. Mac finds himself studying the house's layout, the servants' stairs leading to the second floor, the French doors opening onto the lakefront terrace, the private study where Don Francesco conducts his most sensitive business. As dinner is announced, the guests move into a dining room that could accommodate 20 people comfortably. The mahogany table is set with the Don's finest china, Haviland Limoges with hand-painted roses, and enough crystal stemware to stock a small restaurant. Candlelight flickers across the assembled faces, creating an atmosphere of intimate conspiracy. Don Francesco takes his place at the head of the table, with Mac seated to his right in the position of honor traditionally reserved for his most trusted lieutenant. The gesture is not lost on the other guests, several of whom exchange meaningful glances across the gleaming tableware. During the soup course, a rich lobster bisque that speaks of the Don's expensive tastes, Francesco taps his spoon against his crystal water glass, calling for attention. "My friends, my family," he begins, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades as Chicago's most powerful crime boss. "Tonight we celebrate more than just our continued success. Tonight, we look toward the future." Mac feels every eye in the room upon him as the Don continues. Mickey Benedetto has proven himself not just as a soldier, but as a leader. His strategic thinking, his loyalty, and his understanding of what it takes to maintain respect in our world have impressed me greatly. Maria's hand finds Mac's under the table, her fingers squeezing with barely contained excitement. Across from them, Bobby raises his wine glass slightly in a subtle toast to his friend's recognition. Therefore, Don Francesco announces, "I am naming Mickey as my underboss, second in command of all family operations." The dining room erupts in polite applause, crystal glasses clinking in celebration. But Mac barely hears the congratulations, his attention focused on the silver coin that now burns against his chest like a brand. The mysterious women's prophecy echoes in his mind. "You will sit where Don Torino sits now." Underboss. It's everything Mac has worked toward, everything he's dreamed of achieving. Yet somehow it feels insufficient, like receiving half of what was promised. The coin pulses with each heartbeat, and he can almost see the 3 women's faces reflected in the flickering candlelight. After dinner, the guests retire to Don Francesco's private study for cigars and brandy. The room reflects a lifetime of accumulated power, leather-bound books, oil paintings of Sicilian landscapes, and a massive oak desk where life and death decisions are made with the stroke of a pen. Mac accepts a Cuban cigar and a snifter of Napoleon brandy, the amber liquid catching the study's lamplight like liquid gold. He finds himself standing near the French doors that open onto a terrace overlooking the frozen lake, watching snow fall like ash from the black November sky. The silver coin grows warmer still, and Mac can swear he hears whispered voices carried on the winter wind, voices that sound like 3 mysterious women speaking words of prophecy and promise. As the evening deepens, the other guests begin making their departures. Expensive automobiles pull away from the circular driveway, their headlights cutting through the falling snow as Chicago's criminal elite returns to their respective territories. The mansion grows quieter with each farewell, until only the soft crackle of dying fires and the whisper of wind against frost-covered windows remains. Don Francesco insists that Mac and Maria stay for a nightcap in his private quarters, a gesture of intimacy reserved for only his most trusted confidants. The Don's bedroom suite occupies the entire second floor's east wing, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan's frozen expanse. Persian rugs in deep burgundy cover the hardwood floors, and antique furniture speaks of old-world craftsmanship brought from Sicily decades ago. "Mickey," the Don says, settling into a leather armchair beside the fireplace where logs burn with mesmerizing orange flames, "tomorrow we begin transitioning more responsibilities to you. The other families need to see that succession is already in motion." Mac accepts another brandy, his hand trembling slightly as the crystal snifter catches the firelight. The silver coin has grown so warm it seems to burn against his chest, and he can hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears like distant drums. "Don Francesco, I'm honored by your confidence." Mac manages, though his voice sounds hollow even to himself. Maria excuses herself to powder her nose, but Mac knows she's actually studying the mansion's layout, memorizing exits and entrances, calculating angles and opportunities. The emerald silk of her gown rustles like serpent scales as she disappears into the adjoining bathroom. Left alone with his mentor, Mac feels the weight of 30 years of history pressing down upon him. Don Francesco took him under his wing when Mac returned from the war, taught him the subtleties of power, the importance of respect, the delicate balance between fear and loyalty that keeps a criminal empire functioning. The older man has been father, teacher, and protector all in one. "You're troubled tonight, Mickey," the Don observes, his pale blue eyes still sharp despite his physical decline. "Tell me what weighs on your mind." Mac stares into the fire, watching flames dance across the burning logs like demons performing an ancient ritual. "Just thinking about the future, Don Francesco. About the responsibilities you're placing on my shoulders." The Don chuckles softly, a sound filled with paternal warmth. "Responsibility is the price of power, my boy. But you've earned the right to pay that price." He reaches out and places a weathered hand on Mac's arm. "I see myself in you at your age. Ambitious, hungry, but still possessing honor. That's why I know you'll lead this family well when my time comes." When my time comes. The words echo in Mac's mind like a death sentence. Through the bedroom windows, he can see his reflection ghost-like in the glass, superimposed over the winter landscape beyond. Snow continues to fall, each flake unique and beautiful until it touches the ground and becomes part of something cold and colorless. Maria returns from the bathroom, her lipstick freshly applied and her dark eyes glittering with barely contained excitement. She moves to Mac's side with predatory grace, her perfume mixing with the scent of wood smoke and aged brandy. "Perhaps we should let you rest, Don Francesco," she suggests, her voice honey-sweet with false concern. "It's been a long evening, and you need your strength." The Don rises from his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. "Yes, perhaps you're right. Age demands its tribute in sleep, as well as everything else." He moves toward his massive four-poster bed, its dark wood carved with intricate designs that cast writhing shadows in the firelight. Mac feels Maria's hand slip into his jacket pocket, her fingers closing around the small .22 caliber pistol she placed there while he was distracted by conversation. The weapon feels impossibly heavy, as if it contains not just bullets but the weight of destiny itself. "Mickey," the Don calls from beside his bed. "Before you go, help an old man with something." Mac approaches on unsteady legs, his hand closing around the pistol's grip. Don Francesco has removed his jacket and bow tie, standing in his white dress shirt and suspenders like any grandfather preparing for bed. The vulnerability of the moment strikes Mac like a physical blow. "These old fingers don't work like they used to," the Don says with embarrassment, struggling with his gold cufflinks. "Would you mind?" Mac sets down his brandy snifter and reaches for the cufflinks, his hands shaking as he works the intricate mechanisms. The Don's pulse beats visibly in his neck, just inches from Mac's trembling fingers. The silver coin burns like a coal against Mac's chest, and he can hear the mysterious women's voices carried on the winter wind outside. "You will sit where Don Torino sits now." "There," Mac says hoarsely, stepping back as the cufflinks come free. Don Francesco smiles with genuine affection, the expression of a man who sees Mac as the son he never had. "Thank you, Mickey, for everything. I know I can trust you to protect what we've built together." The trust in those pale blue eyes cuts Mac deeper than any blade. But Maria's presence behind him feels like a physical force, pushing him toward the abyss of betrayal. The pistol seems to pulse in his grip like a living thing, demanding blood to satisfy its appetite. "Don Francesco," Mac whispers, his voice barely audible above the fire's crackling. "I'm sorry." The older man turns at the strange tone, confusion replacing the warmth in his expression. "Sorry for what, Mickey?" Mac raises the .22 caliber pistol, its small barrel catching the firelight like a malevolent eye. Time seems suspended, snowflakes frozen against the windows, flames locked in eternal dance, the Don's face a mask of shock and betrayal. "For this," Mac says, and pulls the trigger. The sound is surprisingly quiet, more like a book falling than the thunder of death. Don Francesco staggers backward, his hand pressed to the spreading red stain on his white shirt, his eyes wide with disbelief that cuts Mac's soul like broken glass. "Mickey," the Don gasps, blood frothing on his lips. "Why?" But Mac has no answer except ambition and prophecy, no justification except the burning coin and his wife's whispered promises of power. Don Francesco Torino, patriarch of Chicago's most powerful crime family, slides down the carved bedpost to the Persian rug below, his life ebbing away like crimson tide. Dawn breaks gray and merciless over Lake Michigan, its pewter waters reflecting the overcast December sky like a mirror made of lead. Inside Don Francesco's mansion, the grandfather clock in the main hallway chimes 6 times, its bronze voice echoing through rooms that now feel haunted by the previous night's violence. Mac stands in the Don's private bathroom, scrubbing blood from his hands with methodical precision. The hot water runs pink down the marble sink's drain, carrying away the physical evidence of patricide while the stain on his soul remains indelible. His reflection in the ornate mirror shows a man aged years in a single night, hollow eyes, ashen skin, and hands that shake despite his attempts at control. Maria moves through the bedroom like an avenging angel, her emerald gown replaced by a practical black dress that allows her to work efficiently. She has already positioned Don Francesco's body to suggest a heart attack, slumped in his leather reading chair, a book fallen to the floor beside him, his face arranged in peaceful repose that belies the bullet hole hidden beneath his dress shirt. "The servants will discover him in 2 hours," she says, checking her diamond wristwatch with clinical detachment. "Mrs. Castellano always brings his morning espresso at 8 sharp. We need to be long gone by then." Mac emerges from the bathroom, his face pale but composed. The silver coin in his vest pocket has finally cooled, as if satisfied by the night's bloody offering. "What about the gun?" Maria produces the .22 caliber pistol, now wrapped in one of the Don's monogrammed handkerchiefs. "It goes into the lake. The winter ice will keep it hidden until spring, and by then, no one will remember this particular weapon existed." They move through the mansion's corridors like ghosts, their footsteps muffled by expensive Persian rugs. The house feels different now. Not the warm sanctuary it was hours ago, but a tomb that holds secrets too terrible for daylight. Oil paintings of Don Francesco's ancestors seem to watch their passage with accusatory eyes. Outside, the December wind cuts across Lake Michigan like a razor blade, carrying the scent of snow and impending violence. Mac retrieves his Buick from the circular driveway, while Maria walks to the estate's private pier, the pistol hidden in her coat pocket. The frozen lake stretches endlessly toward the horizon, its surface broken only by patches of dark water where the current runs too strong for ice to form. The gun disappears beneath the black water with barely a splash, sinking into depths that will keep the secret until Judgment Day. Maria returns to the car without a backward glance, settling into the passenger seat with the satisfaction of a job completed. "How long before they suspect?" Mac asks as they drive away from the estate, the mansion's Tudor silhouette disappearing behind snow-laden pine trees. "Suspect what?" Maria's voice carries the perfect pitch of innocence. An old man with a weak heart finally succumbed to the stress of his position. It happens every day in this city. The drive back to Chicago takes them through increasingly populated neighborhoods as the city awakens to another day of commerce and crime. Milk trucks make their deliveries to restaurants and hotels. Newsboys hawk the morning edition from street corners. And early commuters hurry toward the elevated train platforms that will carry them to offices and factories throughout the metropolitan area. Mac's hands grip the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, his mind replaying the previous night's events like a broken phonograph record. Don Francesco's face, At the moment of betrayal, the sound of the gunshot, the spreading crimson stain on white linen, images that will haunt his sleep for whatever time remains to him. "We need to call an emergency meeting," Mac says, as they enter their own neighborhood. "The family will need strong leadership during this transition." Maria nods approvingly, already thinking several moves ahead like a chess master contemplating checkmate. "Bobby should be your first call. His loyalty to you will help convince the others that succession was always Don Francesco's intention." At home, Mac stands in his study, surrounded by the trappings of middle-class respectability. Law books that serve as props, family photographs that suggest normalcy, and a mahogany desk where he conducts the business of violence with the same attention to detail that other men apply to selling insurance or automobiles. The telephone feels impossibly heavy in his hand as he dials Bobby's number. 3 rings, 4. Then his friend's familiar voice, rough with sleep and last night's cigarettes. "Yeah? Bobby, it's Mac. I need you to get dressed and come over immediately. Something's happened." A pause, then the sound of springs creaking as Bobby sits up in bed. "What kind of something? You sound like death warmed over." "Don Francesco is dead." The silence stretches long enough for Mac to hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Finally, Bobby's voice returns, tight with shock and disbelief. "Dead? How? When?" Mac closes his eyes, feeling the weight of deception settling over him like a shroud. "Heart attack. Sometime during the night. Mrs. Castellano found him this morning in his study. The doctor's there now, but it's official." "Jesus Christ." Bobby breathes. "The Don. I can't believe it. He seemed fine last night. A little tired maybe, but fine." "We need to move fast," Mac continues, his voice growing stronger as he assumes the role of leader. "The other families will see this as an opportunity to move against us. We need to show strength, unity. Can you reach out to the capos? Tell them there's an emergency meeting at Torino's at noon." Bobby agrees, his soldier's instincts overriding his grief and shock. "What about Carmine Rossetti? He's the oldest, been with the Don since the beginning. Some might think he should take over." "Carmine's 70 years old and hasn't run an operation in 5 years. Mac replies, feeling the silver coin's residual warmth against his chest. "The family needs young blood, fresh thinking. Don Francesco made me underboss for a reason." By noon, Torino's restaurant has been transformed from a place of celebration into a somber gathering of Chicago's most dangerous men. The private dining room where just weeks ago Mac received his promotion now hosts an emergency conclave of the family's leadership. Heavy drapes block the winter sunlight, and the crystal chandeliers have been dimmed to cast long shadows across faces etched with grief, suspicion, and barely concealed ambition. Mac enters wearing his finest black suit, a double-breasted charcoal wool that projects both mourning and authority. The silver coin rests warm against his chest, hidden beneath layers of expensive fabric and silk tie. His face shows the appropriate mixture of sorrow and determination as he takes his place at the head of the mahogany conference table where Don Francesco once held court. Bobby sits to Mac's right, his usual joviality replaced by stunned disbelief. Dark circles under his eyes suggest a sleepless morning spent making calls and arranging this gathering. Across the table, Carmine Rossetti's ancient hands tremble as he lights another lucky strike, the cigarette's glow illuminating a face carved by 70 years of violence and survival. Vincent Romano occupies the chair closest to the door, his nervous energy evident in the way his fingers drum against the polished wood. Tommy the Knife Marconi, enforcer for the South Side operations, maintains his usual stone-faced expression while his pale blue eyes study every face in the room for signs of weakness or betrayal. "Gentlemen," Mac begins, his voice carrying the gravity befitting this moment of transition. "We gather in sorrow but also in strength. Don Francesco Torino built an empire that will not crumble with his passing." Murmurs of agreement ripple around the table, though Mac notices several meaningful glances exchanged between the older members. Carmine Rossetti leans forward, his roomy eyes fixed on Mac with the intensity of a predator evaluating potential prey. "Mickey," Carmine says, his voice cracked with age and decades of cigarette smoke, "Don Francesco was like a brother to me. We came up together from the old neighborhood, survived the wars with the Irish and the Poles. His death, it feels wrong somehow." Mac's hand unconsciously moves toward his vest pocket. feeling the coin's warmth through the fabric. Wrong how, Carmine? The man had a weak heart. We all knew it, even if he tried to hide it from us. That's just it, Carmine continues, stubbing out his cigarette with more force than necessary. Francesco never showed weakness. Even when the doctors told him to slow down after his first heart episode 3 years ago, he kept pushing himself. Then suddenly, in the middle of the night, alone in his study, the room falls silent except for the distant sound of traffic outside and the soft hiss of steam from the restaurant's radiators. Mac feels every eye upon him, studying his reaction, searching for tells that might reveal guilt or deception. Bobby clears his throat, breaking the tension. With respect, Carmine, you're looking for mysteries where none exist. The Don was tired last night, we all saw it. He'd been carrying this family on his shoulders for 30 years. Even the strongest heart eventually gives out under that kind of pressure. Vincent Romano nods agreement, but his dark eyes remain fixed on Mac. The question isn't how Don Francesco died, he says carefully. The question is what happens next. The Capellos and the O'Briens will be watching for signs of weakness. They'll move against us if they sense opportunity. Mac rises from his chair, moving to the window overlooking Rush Street, where legitimate businessmen hurry past, unaware they're walking beneath the meeting place of Chicago's most powerful criminal organization. The afternoon sky threatens more snow, and neon signs already glow against the gathering dusk. Don Francesco named me his underboss for a reason. Mac says, his reflection ghost-like in the window glass. He saw the future of this family, and he trusted me to guide it. That trust didn't die with him. Tommy Marconi speaks for the first time, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. You're young, Mickey, young and ambitious. Some might say too ambitious. The words hang in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Mac turns to face the assembled men, seeing the mix of loyalty and suspicion in their weathered faces. These are men who've survived decades in a business where trust is currency, and betrayal means death. Ambition built this family, Mac replies, his voice growing stronger with each word. Don Francesco was ambitious when he took territory from the Toranzos in the 20s. He was ambitious when he survived the reform mayor's crackdown in the 30s. Ambition isn't a weakness. It's what separates leaders from followers. Carmine Rossetti's ancient fingers worry his gold wedding band, a nervous habit Mac has never noticed before. There's ambitious, and there's hungry, Mickey. Sometimes the hungry ones eat their own. The accusation strikes Mac like a physical blow, though he maintains his composure through years of practice at concealing emotion. The silver coin pulses against his chest, and for a moment he can swear he hears the 3 mysterious women's voices whispering encouragement from the shadows. Bobby stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. That's enough, Carmine. Mickey's earned his position through loyalty and results. Don Francesco himself said so not 12 hours ago. You want to dishonor the Don's memory by questioning his judgment? The room divides into factions, those nodding agreement with Bobby's defense, and others whose silence speaks volumes about their reservations. Mac realizes this moment will define not just his leadership but his very survival. In the family's world, doubt is a cancer that spreads quickly and fatally. I propose we put it to a vote, Mac says, his voice steady despite the chaos raging in his mind. All in favor of recognizing me as the new head of this family. Raise your hands. Bobby's hand shoots up immediately, followed more slowly by Vincent Romano and 2 of the younger capos. Tommy Marconi hesitates, then raises his hand with obvious reluctance. Carmine Rossetti keeps his gnarled fingers pressed flat against the table, his silence as loud as a gunshot. 5 in favor. Mac counts, though the victory feels hollow. The family has spoken. As the meeting disperses, the men filing out into the December afternoon like mourners leaving a funeral, Mac remains behind with Bobby. The restaurant feels different now, not the sanctuary it once was, but a fortress that must be defended against enemies both external and within. You handled that well, Bobby says, loosening his black tie. But Carmine's going to be a problem. He's got too much history, too much respect among the old-timers. Max stares at his reflection in the conference table's polished surface, seeing a face he barely recognizes anymore. The silver coin burns against his chest like a brand, marking him as surely as if the 3 mysterious women had carved their prophecy into his flesh. That evening, Mac sits alone in what was once Don Francesco's private office above Torino's restaurant. The room remains unchanged from the old Don's time: mahogany paneling, leather-bound books, and oil paintings of Sicilian landscapes that speak of a homeland most of these men will never see again. Behind the massive oak desk, Mac feels dwarfed by the weight of authority he's claimed through blood and betrayal. The silver coin rests on the desk before him, its mysterious symbols seeming to writhe in the lamplight like living things. Each time Mac tries to put it away, something draws his attention back to its strange markings, symbols that promise power, but demand an increasingly terrible price. Maria enters without knocking, carrying a crystal decanter of aged bourbon and 2 glasses. She's changed from her morning black into a deep red dress that clings to her curves like fresh blood, her dark hair arranged in perfect waves that frame her beautiful face. "You look troubled, darling," she observes, pouring generous measures of the amber liquid. "This should be a night of celebration. You're the most powerful man in Chicago." Mac accepts the bourbon but doesn't drink, instead studying his wife's reflection in the office windows that overlook Rush Street's neon-lit chaos. Carmine Rossetti knows something. I could see it in his eyes during the meeting. Carmine is an old man clinging to the past, Maria dismisses, settling into the leather chair across from the desk. He'll fall in line, or be replaced. That's how power works. And if he doesn't fall in line? Mac asks, though he already knows the answer burning in his wife's dark eyes. Maria's smile is sharp as broken glass. Then you do what any wise leader does with threats to his authority. You eliminate them before they eliminate you. The words hang in the office air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Mac knows she's right. In the family's world, mercy is weakness, and hesitation is death. Yet the thought of ordering another killing, especially of a man who served Don Francesco with unwavering loyalty, fills him with a sick dread that the bourbon cannot wash away. A soft knock at the office door interrupts his brooding. "Come in," Mac calls, his hand instinctively moving toward the .38 revolver holstered beneath his jacket. Bobby enters, his face grave with concern. "Mac, we've got a problem. One of our informants at the police station says they're asking questions about Don Francesco's death." Mac's blood turns to ice water in his veins. "What kind of questions?" "The medical examiner wants to do an autopsy," Bobby continues, closing the door behind him with deliberate care. Apparently, some detective thinks it's suspicious that a man in Francesco's position would die alone, without any witnesses. Maria sets down her bourbon glass with controlled precision, but Mac catches the flash of alarm in her eyes before she masks it with characteristic composure. "Can we stop it?" Bobby shrugs, lighting a lucky strike with hands that betray only the slightest tremor. "Judge Patterson owes us favors, but an autopsy order from the coroner's office. That's harder to make disappear." Mac rises from behind the desk, moving to the window where the city's lights blur together like stars fallen to earth. Below, honest citizens hurry through the December cold, unaware that their fate is being decided in the shadows above their heads. "How long do we have?" Mac asks, his breath fogging the glass as he speaks. 24 hours, maybe less," Bobby replies. "The body's being held at Kowalski's funeral home until then." The implications strike Mac like physical blows. An autopsy would reveal the bullet wound, the deception, the carefully constructed fiction of a heart attack. Within hours, he would go from the head of Chicago's most powerful crime family to a hunted murderer with a price on his head. "There's another way," Maria says quietly, her voice carrying the hypnotic quality that first drew Mac to her 7 years ago. "Fire destroys everything. Flesh, bone, evidence. Funeral homes are notorious for their faulty wiring." Bobby stares at her with undisguised horror. "You're talking about burning down Kowalski's? That's a family business. Been in the neighborhood for 30 years. Old man Kowalski has grandchildren. And Mac has a future," Maria replies with ice-cold logic. "Sometimes, preservation requires destruction. It's the natural order of things." Mac feels the walls of the office closing in around him, the weight of his crimes multiplying like cancer cells. First Don Francesco's murder, now the prospect of destroying innocent lives to cover his tracks. The silver coin on the desk seems to pulse with malevolent energy, feeding on his guilt and fear. "Set it up," Mac says finally, his voice hollow as an empty grave. Bobby's cigarette falls from suddenly nerveless fingers, hitting the Persian rug in a shower of sparks. Mac, you can't be serious. There are other ways to handle this. Are there? Mac turns from the window, his face haggard in the lamplight. Tell me, Bobby, what other ways? Bribing the medical examiner? He's already been asking questions. Threatening the detective? That just brings more attention. No, Maria's right. Sometimes you have to burn the past to protect the future. The silence stretches between them like a chasm that can never be bridged. Bobby sees something in his friend's eyes that wasn't there before. A coldness that speaks of lines crossed and souls sold for power's bitter fruit. I'll handle the arrangements, Bobby says finally, his voice thick with resignation and growing fear. But Mac, once we cross this line, there's no going back. We'll be murderers of innocence, not just soldiers in a war between families. Mac returns to his chair behind the massive oak desk, the silver coin warm beneath his fingers. Outside the office windows, snow begins to fall again, each flake unique and pure until it touches the corrupted earth below. We crossed that line the moment I pulled the trigger, Mac replies, his words carrying the weight of absolute truth. Everything since then has just been survival. As Bobby leaves to arrange the fire that will consume evidence and innocence alike, Mac stares at his reflection in the office windows. The man looking back is a stranger, hollow-eyed, haggard, marked by crimes that grow like shadows in his soul. The silver coin pulses one final time, and Mac can swear he hears the three mysterious women's laughter carried on the December wind that rattles the windows of his stolen throne. 3 months have passed since Don Francesco's death, and winter's grip on Chicago has tightened like a noose around the city's throat. Icicles hang from the eaves of Torino's restaurant like crystal daggers, and the February wind carries the bite of Lake Michigan's frozen fury. Inside his office above the dining room, Max sits behind the oak desk that once belonged to his murdered mentor, his face gaunt from sleepless nights and haunted days. The morning newspapers spread across the desk tell a story of escalating violence that has the city's politicians calling for federal intervention. Gang war erupts in Windy City, screams the Tribune's headline. While the Sun-Times reports fifth body found in Chicago River. What the papers don't reveal is that each corpse represents a perceived threat to Mac's authority. A potential rival eliminated before they could gather sufficient support to challenge his rule. Mac's reflection in the window shows a man aged beyond his years, his once sharp features now hollow and predatory. The expensive suits still fit perfectly, but they hang on a frame ravaged by guilt and paranoia. Dark circles under his eyes speak of nights spent pacing his bedroom while Maria sleeps peacefully beside him, her dreams untroubled by the ghosts that torment her husband. The silver coin rests permanently in his vest pocket now, its warmth a constant reminder of the three mysterious women's prophecy. Sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, Max swears he can hear their voices whispering warnings about enemies gathering like storm clouds on the horizon. A soft knock interrupts his brooding. "Come in," Mac calls, his hand automatically checking the .38 revolver that never leaves his side anymore. Bobby enters, but the easy camaraderie that once defined their friendship has been replaced by careful formality. His face shows the strain of 3 months spent executing increasingly brutal orders, and his eyes hold a wariness that cuts Mac deeper than any blade. The Kowalski job is done, Bobby reports, settling into the chair across from the desk, without invitation. The fire department's calling it an electrical malfunction. Old wiring, they say. Nothing suspicious. Mac nods, though the memory of flames consuming Kowalski's funeral home still haunts his dreams. 8 innocent people died in that blaze. The funeral director, his wife, 2 employees working late, and 4 mourners who'd come to pay final respects to their grandmother. The newspapers called it a tragedy, never suspecting it was actually murder on a scale that would have shocked even Chicago's hardened criminals. Good, Mac says, though the word tastes like ash in his mouth. Any word from our police contacts about the investigation? Case closed. Don Francesco's death is officially ruled natural causes, heart failure brought on by stress and advanced age. Bobby lights a lucky strike, his 3rd cigarette in as many hours. But Mac, we've got bigger problems. Through the office windows, Mac watches pedestrians hurry past on Rush Street, bundled against the February cold in wool coats and fur collars. Their lives seem impossibly simple compared to the blood-soaked complexity of his existence. What kind of problems? Mac asks, though he already suspects the answer from Bobby's troubled expression. Carmine Rossetti's been talking to people. Quietly, carefully, but talking nonetheless. Bobby's cigarette trembles slightly between his fingers. He's been asking questions about Don Francesco's last night, about who had access to the house, about certain timing issues that don't add up. Mac's hand moves unconsciously to his vest pocket, feeling the silver coins heat through the fabric. What kind of questions? He knows you and Maria were the last ones to see Don Francesco alive. He knows the medical examiner wanted an autopsy before the funeral home burned. He's connecting dots that could spell trouble for both of us. The office seems to shrink around Mac, the mahogany paneling pressing closer while oil paintings of Sicilian landscapes watch him with accusatory eyes. The weight of his crimes multiplies with each passing day, and now the very foundation of his power threatens to crumble beneath the growing suspicion of men who once called him brother. How many people has he talked to? Mac asks, his voice steady despite the chaos raging in his mind. Bobby stubs out his cigarette with unnecessary force. At least 6 of the capos, maybe more. He's being careful, feeling them out. But the questions are getting more direct. Mac rises from his chair and moves to the window, pressing his palm against the cold glass while studying his ghostly reflection. The man staring back looks like a stranger, hollow-eyed, haunted, marked by guilt that no amount of power can wash away. Set up a meeting, Mac says finally. Tonight. Tell Carmine I want to discuss family business, just the 2 of us. Mac? Bobby's voice carries a warning that speaks of their long friendship. Carmine's been with this family for 40 years. He's got respect, connections. If he disappears, if he keeps asking questions, we'll all disappear. Mac interrupts, turning from the window with eyes that glitter like broken glass. Into federal custody or unmarked graves. Is that what you want? The silence stretches between them like a chasm that grows wider with each passing day. Bobby sees something in his friend's face that terrifies him, a coldness that speaks of souls sold and innocence murdered for ambition's sake. I'll make the call, Bobby agrees reluctantly, though his voice lacks its former conviction. As Bobby leaves to arrange what will likely be Carmine Rossetti's final meeting, Mac returns to his position behind the oak desk. The silver coin pulses with malevolent warmth, and for a moment he swears he can see the 3 mysterious women's faces reflected in the polished wood surface, faces that smile with the satisfaction of prophecy fulfilled and destruction sown. Outside, the February wind howls through Chicago's steel and concrete canyons, carrying the scent of snow and the promise of more blood to come. Mac's empire, built on the foundation of a murdered mentor's trust, continues to expand like a cancer through the city's criminal underworld. But cancer, Mac knows from sleepless nights spent contemplating his fate, eventually consumes its host as surely as it destroys everything else in its path. The meeting with Carmine Rossetti is set for 10 o'clock that evening at a warehouse on Chicago's south side, neutral territory where the old man might feel secure enough to speak freely. Mac spends the afternoon in preparation, cleaning his .38 revolver with methodical precision, while Maria watches from the leather sofa in their living room. You're making the right choice, she says, her voice carrying the hypnotic quality that has guided him through 3 months of escalating violence. Carmine represents the old ways, the old loyalties. He'll never accept you as Don Francesco's true successor. Mac examines the revolver's cylinder, ensuring each chamber holds its deadly cargo. The silver coin in his vest pocket has grown so warm it seems to burn against his chest, as if feeding on the violence he's about to unleash. He was like an uncle to me when I first joined the family, Mac says, his voice hollow with the weight of impending betrayal. Taught me how to read the streets, how to spot undercover cops, how to command respect without always resorting to violence. Maria rises from the sofa and moves behind his chair, her hands working the tension from his shoulders with practiced skill. And now he threatens everything you've built. Loyalty is a luxury you can't afford anymore, Mickey. Power demands sacrifice, sometimes of the people we care about most. The warehouse district lies shrouded in February fog that rolls off Lake Michigan like the breath of sleeping giants. Mac's Buick Roadmaster glides through empty streets where honest citizens fear to tread after dark, past loading docks and freight yards where legitimate commerce gives way to the family's more profitable enterprises. Inside Warehouse 47, a single bare bulb hangs from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows across stacks of wooden crates that contain everything from stolen merchandise to contraband weapons. The concrete floor bears stains that might be rust or might be something far more sinister, and the air carries the mingled scents of machine oil and decay. Carmine Rossetti arrives precisely at 10, his aged Packard pulling up to the warehouse's side entrance. At 70, he moves with the careful dignity of a man who has survived decades in Chicago's most dangerous profession. His charcoal overcoat and fedora speak of old-world elegance, while the bulge beneath his left armpit suggests he hasn't survived this long by trusting anyone completely. "Mickey," Carmine greets, his voice carrying the weight of 4 decades in the family. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet on such short notice." Mac steps from the shadows between 2 towering stacks of crates, his own coat open despite the February cold to allow quick access to his weapon. "You said you had concerns about family business, Carmine. I'm here to listen." The old man's roomy eyes study Mac's face in the harsh light, searching for something that might once have been there but has long since been burned away by guilt and paranoia. "It's about Don Francesco's death, Mickey. Things that don't add up, questions that need answers." Mac feels the silver coin burning against his chest like a brand. Such as? "Such as why the medical examiner suddenly dropped his request for an autopsy," Carmine says, moving closer with the slow deliberation of a man who knows he might not leave this warehouse alive. "Such as how convenient it was that Kowalski's funeral home burned down the night before that autopsy was scheduled." The warehouse seems to contract around them, the shadows pressing closer, while the single bulb swings slightly in the cold air seeping through broken windows. Mac's hand hovers near his holstered revolver, though he prays he won't have to use it against this man who taught him so much. "Convenient coincidences happen all the time in this city," Mac replies, his voice steady despite the chaos raging in his mind. "Old wiring, overloaded circuits, tragic but not uncommon." Carmine's laugh is bitter as winter wind. 8 innocent people died in that fire, Mickey. 8 souls who never harmed anyone, never chose this life of violence and blood. Their deaths weigh heavily on whoever ordered them. The accusation hangs in the warehouse air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Mac sees the knowledge in Carmine's ancient eyes, the certainty born of 40 years spent navigating the treacherous currents of organized crime. "You're walking dangerous ground, old man," Mac warns, though his voice lacks conviction. "Accusations like that could get a person hurt." "I'm already hurt, Mickey," Carmine replies, unbuttoning his overcoat with deliberate slowness. "Hurt by watching a young man I helped raise turn into something I don't recognize. Hurt by knowing that Don Francesco's trust was repaid with betrayal and murder." Mac draws his .38 revolver, the metal cold against his palm despite the silver coin's burning heat against his chest. "I gave you a chance to walk away, Carmine. A chance to retire quietly and live out your remaining years in peace." The old man makes no move toward his own weapon, instead reaching into his coat pocket and producing a small leather journal bound with string. "This contains everything I know. Everything I suspect. Names, dates, connections. Insurance, you might call it." "Where is it?" Mac demands, though he keeps the revolver trained on Carmine's chest. "Safe," Carmine replies, "with instructions to deliver it to federal authorities if anything happens to me. You kill me, Mickey, and this whole family goes down. Including Bobby Banquo, who I know helped you plan Don Francesco's murder." The mention of Bobby's name strikes Mac like a physical blow. His closest friend, his most loyal supporter, would be destroyed by Carmine's revelations just as surely as Mac himself. "You're bluffing," Mac says, though doubt creeps into his voice like poison through his veins. Carmine smiles sadly, the expression of a man who has accepted his fate. "Maybe I am. But are you willing to bet Bobby's life on it? Are you willing to gamble with the lives of everyone in this family?" The warehouse falls silent except for the distant sound of foghorns on Lake Michigan and the soft whisper of wind through broken windows. Mac stands frozen, his weapon trained on a man who might hold the power to destroy everything he's built through blood and betrayal. The silver coin pulses against his chest like a second heartbeat, and he can swear he hears the 3 mysterious women's voices carried on the February wind. power demands sacrifice. The standoff stretches into minutes that feel like hours, two men locked in a deadly game of chess where the wrong move means destruction for both players. Mac's .38 revolver remains trained on Carmine's chest while the old man stands motionless, his weathered hands visible and empty, but his eyes holding the quiet confidence of someone who believes he holds the winning card. "You mentioned Bobby," Mac says finally, his voice tight with the strain of holding the heavy weapon steady. "What makes you think he was involved in anything?" Carmine's smile is sad but knowing. "Because Bobby Banquo would follow you into hell itself, Mickey. He's proven that over the past 3 months by carrying out orders that would have sickened him a year ago. The warehouse fires, the rival family eliminations, the innocent bystanders who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Bobby's fingerprints are all over this city's recent bloodshed." Mac feels sweat beading on his forehead despite the warehouse's February chill. Every word from Carmine's mouth drives another nail into the coffin of his carefully constructed empire. "Even if what you're suggesting were true," Mac says, "what would you want in return for your discretion?" The old man shakes his head with the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. "There's nothing you could offer that would wash the blood from your hands, Mickey. Don Francesco trusted you like a son, and you repaid that trust with a bullet to his heart. Some sins are beyond redemption." The silver coin burns against Mac's chest with such intensity that he half expects his vest to burst into flames. The three mysterious women's voices echo in his mind, no longer offering prophecy but demanding payment for their dark gifts. "Then what do you want?" Mac asks, desperation creeping into his voice. "Justice," Carmine replies simply. "For Don Francesco, for the Kowalski family, for every innocent life lost because of your ambition. I want you to confess, to face the consequences of what you've done." Mac's laugh is harsh as breaking glass. "Confess? To whom? The police who take our money? The politicians who dance to our tune? The federal agents who can't tell the difference between protection and extortion? To the family," Carmine answers. "To the men who trusted you, who believed in your leadership. Let them decide your fate." The warehouse air seems to thicken around them, heavy with the weight of accumulated violence and betrayal. Mac realizes that Carmine isn't just threatening to expose his crimes to law enforcement, he's proposing something far more terrifying. A family trial, where his peers would judge him according to their own brutal code of justice. "You know what the verdict would be," Mac says, though his voice lacks conviction. "I know what it should be," Carmine replies. "The question is whether you have enough honor left to accept it." Mac's finger tightens on the revolver's trigger, the metal cold against his skin while the silver coin burns like hellfire against his chest. He thinks of Maria waiting at home, of the empire he's built through blood and deception, of the prophecy that promised him dominion over Chicago's criminal underworld. "I'm sorry, Carmine," Mac whispers, and pulls the trigger. The gunshot echoes through the warehouse like thunder, reverberating off concrete walls and steel rafters. Carmine Rossetti staggers backward, his hand pressed to the spreading red stain on his white shirt, his eyes wide with disappointment rather than surprise. "So much like your father," he gasps, blood frothing on his lips. "He chose ambition over honor too, in the end." The old man slides down a stack of wooden crates to the stained concrete floor, his life ebbing away like tide retreating from a polluted shore. His final breath rattles in the warehouse's cold air, leaving Mac alone with another ghost to haunt his sleepless nights. Mac stands over the body for long minutes, his smoking revolver hanging loose in his grip, while reality crashes down around him like a demolished building. The leather journal lies beside Carmine's still form, its string binding already darkening with blood. With trembling hands, Mac retrieves the journal and flips through its pages. The old man's careful handwriting documents everything: dates, times, witness statements, financial records that trace the blood money flowing through legitimate businesses. 40 years of accumulated knowledge about the family's operations, including detailed speculation about Don Francesco's death and the subsequent cover-up. But as Mac reads deeper, his relief turns to horror. The journal contains no mention of federal contacts or insurance policies. Carmine had been bluffing about external protection, trusting in Mac's remaining humanity to keep him alive long enough to negotiate a peaceful resolution. That humanity, Mac realizes with crushing despair, died in the warehouse along with Carmine Rossetti. The drive back to the city passes in a blur of neon signs and empty streets, the Buick's heater struggling against the February cold that seems to have taken permanent residence in Mac's bones. Behind him, Warehouse 47 stands dark and silent, holding another secret that will eventually surface to demand payment. At home, Maria waits in their living room wearing a silk robe the color of fresh blood, a crystal glass of bourbon warming in her perfectly manicured hands. She looks up as Mac enters, studying his haggard face for signs of the evening's outcome. "It's done?" she asks, though his expression already provides the answer. Mac nods, collapsing into his leather chair while exhaustion weighs down his limbs like chains. Carmine Rossetti won't be asking any more questions. Maria's smile is sharp as a blade. "Good. Now we can focus on consolidating power instead of constantly looking over our shoulders." But Mac knows the truth that his wife refuses to see. That power built on betrayal and murder is a house of cards that grows more unstable with each bloody foundation stone. The silver coin in his vest pocket has finally cooled, its prophecy fulfilled, and its price extracted in full measure. Outside their suburban home, snow begins to fall again, each flake pure and white until it touches the corrupted earth below. Spring arrives in Chicago like a reluctant witness, melting the winter's accumulated snow to reveal the city's sins buried beneath pristine white. April rain drums against the windows of Mac's North Shore home, each droplet carrying the weight of accusations that no amount of power can silence. The suburban street that once represented respectability and success now feels like a prison yard where condemned men await their final judgment. Inside the colonial house with its white shutters and manicured lawn, Mac paces the living room at 3 in the morning while Maria sleeps fitfully upstairs. The silver coin rests on the mantelpiece now, its mysterious symbols visible in the flickering light from the fireplace, where Mac burns document after document, evidence of crimes that multiply like cancer cells through his corrupted empire. 6 months have passed since Carmine Rossetti's murder, and Mac's paranoia has transformed from reasonable caution into consuming madness. He sees enemies in every shadow, betrayal in every sideways glance, and death in every ringing telephone. The family's operations continue under his iron-fisted rule, but loyalty held together by fear alone proves as fragile as glass under pressure. Bobby Banquo sits in the leather chair across from the fireplace, his once jovial face now marked by the strain of executing increasingly brutal orders. Dark circles under his eyes speak of sleepless nights, spent contemplating sins that weigh heavier than the gold they've earned through blood and betrayal. "The Capello family is moving against our territory on the west side," Bobby reports, his voice hollow as an empty grave. "3 of our numbers runners turned up dead in the Chicago River this morning. Professional work. 2 bullets to the back of the head, cement shoes." Mac feeds another page into the fire, watching flames consume financial records that could put him in the electric chair if they ever reached federal investigators. "Double our security on all operations. I want armed guards at every policy wheel, every bookie joint, every warehouse we control." "Mac," Bobby says carefully, "we're running out of soldiers willing to take those risks. Word on the street is that anyone who works for us ends up dead, either from rival families or from you when you decide they might be informants." The accusation strikes Mac like a physical blow. Over the past 6 months, his suspicions have claimed the lives of 7 family members who showed signs of disloyalty, questionable judgment, or simple exhaustion with the escalating violence. "Better safe than sorry," Mac replies, though his voice lacks conviction. "One informant can destroy everything we've built." Bobby lights his 4th cigarette in an hour, the flame from his Zippo illuminating features aged beyond their years. "What we've built? Mac. Look around you. Half the family is dead, the other half is terrified, and the federal agents are asking questions that get more specific every day. This isn't an empire, it's a slaughterhouse." From upstairs comes the sound of footsteps, slow, measured paces across the hardwood floors of the master bedroom. Mac and Bobby fall silent, listening to Maria's midnight wanderings that have become as regular as clockwork over the past month. "She's been doing that for weeks," Mac says, his voice barely above a whisper. "Walking the house at all hours, washing her hands until they bleed, talking to people who aren't there." Bobby studies his friend's haggard face in the firelight. Maybe she should see a doctor. There are specialists who deal with stress-related conditions. No doctors, Mac snaps, his paranoia flaring like gasoline thrown on flames. No outsiders who might ask questions or make connections. We handle our own problems. The footsteps overhead grow more agitated, accompanied now by the sound of running water from the master bathroom sink. Maria's voice drifts down through the ceiling, not words exactly, but the rhythm of conversation with invisible companions who demand answers she cannot give. Mac rises from his chair and moves to the window, pulling back the curtain to study the empty street beyond. Rain streams down the glass like tears, distorting the view of suburban homes where honest families sleep peacefully in beds, unstained by blood and betrayal. I had another visit from Agent Morrison yesterday, Bobby says quietly, referring to the federal investigator whose interest in the family's activities has grown increasingly focused. He knows about the warehouse fires, the missing persons, the connection between all the recent violence. He's building a case, Mac. A big one. Mac's reflection in the rain-streaked window shows a man hollowed out by guilt and paranoia, his once sharp features now predatory and desperate. The silver coin on the mantelpiece seems to pulse with malevolent light, feeding on the chaos it helped create. What did you tell him? Mac asks, though he fears the answer burning in Bobby's tired eyes. Nothing. Yet. Bobby stubs out his cigarette with unnecessary force, but he's offering protection for witnesses, new identities, enough money to start over somewhere far from Chicago. It's tempting, Mac, more tempting every day. The footsteps overhead stop abruptly, followed by silence so complete it feels like the house itself is holding its breath. Then Maria's voice carries down from the bedroom, clear and terrible in its anguish. Out, damned spot! Out, I say! Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hands? Mac closes his eyes, recognizing fragments of Shakespeare mixed with his wife's guilt-induced ravings. The woman who once drove him toward ambition and murder now wanders their home like a ghost, haunted by crimes that seemed justified when power was the only goal worth pursuing. She's getting worse, Bobby observes with genuine concern. Mac, you need to face the truth. This can't continue much longer. The family's falling apart, Maria's losing her mind, and the federal agents are closing in like wolves around a wounded deer. Mac turns from the window, his hand moving unconsciously, to where the .38 revolver rests beneath his jacket. Trust has become impossible in a world where every conversation might be recorded, every friend might be wearing a wire, every ally might be negotiating their own deal with federal prosecutors. Are you wearing a wire, Bobby? Mac asks, the question hanging in the room's air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Bobby's face goes pale, his eyes wide with the shock of betrayal that cuts deeper than any blade. Jesus Christ, Mac. After everything we've been through together, after all the blood we've spilled side by side, you're asking me that? The silence between the two men stretches like a chasm that years of friendship cannot bridge. Bobby stares at Mac with eyes that hold more hurt than anger, the expression of a man watching his closest friend descend into madness beyond redemption. Stand up, Mac orders, his voice cold as Lake Michigan ice in February. Arms out to your sides. Bobby rises slowly from the leather chair, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Mac, this is insane. I'm your oldest friend, your most loyal soldier. We've bled together, killed together, built this empire together. Mac moves behind him, his hands roughly patting down Bobby's jacket, feeling for the telltale bulk of recording equipment. The search is thorough and humiliating, reducing decades of trust to the paranoid necessities of survival in a world where betrayal has become currency. Clear, Mac announces, though his voice carries no relief. Sit down. Bobby complies, but the damage has been done. Something fundamental has broken between them. The last thread connecting Mac to his humanity, the final anchor that might have pulled him back from the abyss of complete moral collapse. From upstairs comes the sound of Maria's voice again, this time singing a lullaby from her childhood in Little Italy. The melody drifts down through the ceiling like smoke from burning dreams, beautiful and terrible in its innocence. She was washing invisible bloodstains from her hands at 4 this morning, Mac says, settling back into his chair across from Bobby. Yesterday I found her scrubbing the kitchen floor with bleach, convinced she could see Carmine Rossetti's blood seeping through the linoleum. Bobby lights another cigarette, his hands trembling slightly as the Zippo's flame illuminates his weathered features. Maybe if you told her about Carmine's journal, about how there was never any real threat to our safety, it might ease her mind. Mac's laugh is bitter as winter wind. You think I haven't tried? She doesn't remember ordering the Kowalski fire anymore. In her mind, 8 innocent people died for no reason at all. The guilt is eating her alive. The irony strikes Bobby with crushing force. Maria, who orchestrated so much of the violence that secured Mac's power, now suffers more from its consequences than the man who actually pulled the triggers. The architect of betrayal has become its primary victim. A car door slams in the driveway outside, followed by footsteps on the front porch that sound too heavy and purposeful for neighbors making social calls. Mac draws his .38 revolver, moving to the window with predatory caution. Through the rain-distorted glass, he can see 3 figures in dark overcoats and fedoras, the federal agent's uniform that has haunted his nightmares for months. Agent Morrison stands at the center, his lean frame radiating the quiet confidence of a hunter who has finally cornered his prey. FBI, Mac announces, his voice tight with the strain of impending doom. Morrison and 2 others. They're coming to the front door. Bobby stubs out his cigarette and rises from his chair, his face resigned to whatever comes next. Maybe it's time, Mac. Maybe this is how it ends. Not in a blaze of gunfire, but with handcuffs in a federal courthouse. The doorbell rings once, twice, then Morrison's voice carries through the heavy oak door. Michael Benedetto. This is Agent Morrison with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant for your arrest. Mac moves to the fireplace, feeding the last of his incriminating documents into flames that leap higher with each page. Financial records, phone logs, photographs that connect him to murders spanning 6 months of escalating violence, all turn to ash and smoke that rises up the chimney like prayers from a corrupted soul. Mrs. Benedetto, Morrison calls. We know you're inside. This doesn't have to end badly. Open the door, and let's discuss this like civilized people. From upstairs comes the crash of breaking glass, followed by Maria's scream of pure anguish. Mac rushes toward the staircase, taking the steps 3 at a time while Bobby follows close behind. They find Maria in the master bathroom, standing before the shattered mirror with blood streaming from dozens of small cuts on her hands and face. Glass fragments lie scattered across the marble floor like fallen stars, each piece reflecting fragments of her tormented face. I can't make them clean, she sobs, holding up her bloodied hands. No matter how much I scrub, no matter how hot the water, the stains just keep spreading. Mac moves toward her, careful to avoid the broken glass, his voice gentler than it's been in months. Maria, sweetheart, we need to leave, right now. There are federal agents downstairs. She looks at him with eyes that no longer recognize the man she married, seeing only the monster that ambition and prophecy created from the ashes of innocence. You did this to us, Mickey. You killed that sweet old man who trusted you like a son, and now we're both damned. The front door splinters under the impact of a battering ram, followed by the thunder of boots on hardwood floors. Morrison's voice echoes through the house. Federal agents! Nobody move! Mac grabs Maria's arm, trying to guide her toward the bedroom window that opens onto the roof of the attached garage. We can still get out. I've got safe houses, money hidden where they'll never find it, contacts who can get us out of the country. She pulls away from his grip, her bloody hands leaving crimson prints on his white shirt. There's nowhere to run from what we've done, Mickey. The dead follow us wherever we go. The sound of footsteps on the staircase grows closer while rain continues to drum against the windows like the fingers of the condemned seeking entry. Mac realizes that the silver coin's prophecy has been fulfilled in ways he never imagined. He sits where Don Francesco once sat, commands what Don Francesco once commanded. But the throne he claimed, through murder, has become his own electric chair. Bobby appears in the bathroom doorway, his face pale with the realization that 30 years of friendship have led to this moment of absolute betrayal and ruin. They're on the landing, he reports quietly. Mac, it's over. Agent Morrison appears in the bathroom doorway, his service revolver drawn but pointed toward the floor. Behind him, Two younger agents flank the entrance while water from the broken sink continues to flow across the marble floor, mixing with Maria's blood in pink rivulets that swirl toward the drain. "Mrs. Benedetto," Morrison says gently, his voice carrying the practiced calm of a man who has seen madness destroy criminal empires before. "You need medical attention. Let us help you." Maria laughs, a sound like crystal shattering in winter wind. "Help? You want to help the woman who burned 8 innocent souls to protect a murderer's secret? There's no help for someone like me, Agent Morrison, only judgment." Mac keeps his .38 revolver trained on the federal agents, though he knows the gesture is futile. The house is surrounded, his escape routes blocked, his empire crumbling like sandcastles before an inevitable tide. "You've got nothing on me," Mac says, though his voice lacks conviction. "Suspicions aren't evidence, and rumors aren't testimony." Morrison's smile is sad but certain. "We have Bobby's statement, recorded 3 days ago in a federal safe house. Full confession. Dates, locations, methods, everything. Mr. Benedetto. Don Francesco's murder, the Kowalski fire, Carmine Rossetti's execution. All of it." Mac's world tilts on its axis as he turns to stare at his oldest friend, seeing the truth written in Bobby's hollow eyes. The man who stood beside him through war and peace, who helped build an empire on blood and betrayal, has finally chosen survival over loyalty. "Bobby?" Mac's voice breaks like a boy's, carrying decades of shared history and shattered trust. Bobby cannot meet his friend's gaze. "I'm sorry, Mac, but I've got a daughter starting college in the fall, a wife who still believes I'm a good man. I couldn't watch them suffer for sins they never committed." The silver coin on the mantelpiece downstairs seems to pulse with malevolent satisfaction, its prophecy fulfilled in ways that twist honor into madness and friendship into betrayal. Mac realizes that the 3 mysterious women offered him power but never mentioned its price, not just in blood spilled, but in souls corrupted beyond redemption. "Maria," Morrison says again, holstering his weapon and stepping carefully around the broken glass. "Come with us. There are doctors who can help, treatments that can ease the burden you're carrying." She looks up from her bloodied hands, her dark eyes focusing on something beyond the visible world. "Do you hear them, Agent Morrison? The voices of the innocent, calling for justice? They've been singing to me for months, their choir growing larger with each life we destroyed." Mac watches in horror as his wife moves toward the shattered bathroom window, her bare feet leaving bloody prints on glass shards. The 3-story drop to the concrete driveway below would mean certain death, but Maria's expression suggests she welcomes such release. "Don't," Mac pleads, lowering his revolver as the futility of resistance crushes down upon him. "Please, Maria. We can face this together, serve our time, maybe find some kind of redemption on the other side." She turns to him with a smile that breaks his heart. The same radiant expression she wore on their wedding day 7 years ago, before ambition and prophecy corrupted their love into something monstrous. "Redemption, Mickey. Look at what we've become. Look at the trail of bodies we've left in pursuit of power that tastes like ashes in our mouths." She places one bloodied hand on the window frame. "I won't let them put me in a cage. Won't give journalists and prosecutors the satisfaction of watching me break down piece by piece." "Maria, no." But she is already stepping through the shattered window, her crimson dress billowing like wings as she falls toward the rain-soaked pavement below. The sound of impact echoes through the April morning like the closing of a tomb. Mac drops his revolver and sinks to his knees among the broken glass, the weight of accumulated guilt finally crushing what remained of his humanity. The silver coin's warmth has transformed into ice-cold metal that burns against his chest like a brand marking him for eternal damnation. Agent Morrison moves forward with handcuffs that gleam like silver in the bathroom's harsh light. "Michael Benedetto, you're under arrest for the murders of Francesco Torino, Carmine Rossetti, and 8 counts of felony murder in connection with the Kowalski funeral home fire." As the cuffs click shut around his wrists, Mac can hear the distant sound of sirens approaching, police cars, ambulances, and coroner's wagons coming to process the wreckage of his fallen empire. The suburban street, where he once dreamed of respectability, will soon swarm with reporters and federal agents, transforming his home into a crime scene that will make front-page news across the nation. Through the broken window, Mac can see Maria's still form on the concrete below, surrounded by the spring rain that cannot wash away the stains of their crimes. The woman who drove him toward ambition and murder has found her own escape from the consequences, leaving him to face judgment alone. Bobby stands in the bathroom doorway, his face etched with grief and guilt that will follow him through whatever years remain. I'm sorry, Mac. For all of it. For what we became, for what we lost, for what could never be forgiven. Mac nods, understanding finally penetrating the fog of madness that has consumed him for months. The three mysterious women's prophecy has been fulfilled in every terrible detail. He sits where Don Francesco once sat, commands what Don Francesco once commanded, but the throne built on betrayal has become his own scaffolding. As Agent Morrison leads him toward the staircase, Mac glances back at the shattered mirror that reflects his fractured image in 1,000 pieces. Each fragment shows a different aspect of his corruption: the loving husband, the loyal soldier, the ambitious lieutenant, the paranoid killer. All of them broken beyond repair, scattered like glass across the floor of his ruined life. The silver coin remains on the mantelpiece downstairs, its mysterious symbols finally still. The prophecy is complete, the price paid in full, and Chicago's streets run red with the blood of dreams that promised everything and delivered only damnation. Outside, spring rain continues to fall, washing the winter's accumulated sins toward late